You were promised that a diploma was a ticket to a better life. They lied. This watermarked piece of cardboard turned out not to be an asset, but the most expensive liability in your life. It's a promissory note, written against your future. Imagine an army. 45 million people. That's more than the population of Canada. Each one of them is a debtor. Their collective bill totals $1.7 trillion, a number that grows faster than you can say it. This is the story of a generation that did everything right. They studied hard. They believed in the system. They took on debt because they were told it was an investment. But the rules of the game were changed without their knowledge. In 2005, the U.S. Congress passed a law that turned this investment into a life sentence. It made student loans virtually non-dischargeable, even through bankruptcy. Any other debt, from a credit card to a failed business venture, can be restructured or forgiven. But not this one. This transformed the system into a financial one-way valve. Money and interest can only flow in one direction, from you to the creditor. The pressure is never released. You can't hit the reset button as any corporation does when facing problems. You are chained to this debt, forever. Because of this, you can pay for years, decades, and end up owing more than you originally borrowed. This is called interest capitalization, a complex term for a very simple mechanism. Every time you can't make a payment or your payments don't cover the accrued interest, that difference is added to the principal balance, and interest starts accruing on that too. Your debt begins to multiply. This system isn't broken. It hasn't failed. It works exactly as intended. It's a flawlessly engineered mechanism for wealth transfer, a machine that takes the future from the young and ambitious and puts it into the hands of the financial industry. And this machine wasn't built by accident. Its blueprints were created in the 60s. President Lyndon Johnson was at its inception. His Great Society program had a noble goal. No capable American should be denied a college education because their family couldn't afford it. Thus came the Higher Education Act of 1965. It created a system of federally guaranteed loans. It was a social ladder, not a debt trap. But where the government sees a social mission, Wall Street sees a new market. To attract private banks to the program, the government offered them a deal they couldn't refuse. It would guarantee 100% of every student loan issued. Think about this mechanism. You're a bank. You lend money to an 18-year-old with no credit history or assets. If they repay the debt with interest, you profit. If they default, the government, meaning the taxpayer, covers all your losses. All risk simply vanished. For the financial industry, it was a gold mine, a win-win game, sponsored by the state. To service this new industry, Congress created a special organization in 1972, the Student Loan Marketing Association, or Sallie Mae. Initially, it was a hybrid, a quasi-governmental entity that bought loans from banks, creating liquidity and allowing them to issue even more loans. The system began to accelerate. The main goal was no longer the quality of education, but the quantity of loans issued. The greater the debt, the greater the guaranteed profit. Universities, seeing this endless stream of cheap money, began to inflate tuition prices. Why economize if students can borrow any amount? And then the masks came off. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, Sallie Mae was fully privatized. From a semi-governmental agent, it transformed into a giant private corporation, accountable only to its shareholders. Its purpose fundamentally changed. It was no longer about facilitating education. It was about extracting maximum profit from debtors. The social ladder was dismantled. In its place, a pump was built. This pump acquired a name, SLM Corporation. This was the new legal entity of Sallie Mae, traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Its social mission was officially revoked. It now had one directive, dictated by Wall Street: maximize shareholder value. And the best way to do that is to maximize your debt. And they developed a whole arsenal of tools for this. Their call centers turned into psychological pressure machines. Their lawyers became specialists in wage garnishment. But their main weapon was hidden in the fine print. Imagine you're in a difficult situation. You lost your job. You got sick. You call them to ask for a deferment. They kindly offer you a way out, a procedure called forbearance. It sounds like help. In reality, it's a financial trap. During forbearance, your payments stop, but interest continues to accrue at a furious rate. And at the end of the period, all that accumulated interest is added to your principal debt. With a stroke of a pen, your loan grows by thousands of dollars. You asked for a lifeline. They threw you an anchor. Your inability to pay became their business model. The longer you pay, the more they earn. Default isn't a problem for them. It's an opportunity. An opportunity to charge penalties, fees, and legal costs that the government will cover anyway. It's a zero-risk game with infinite profit potential. To protect this model, Sallie Mae spent millions lobbying in Washington. Its primary target was that very 2005 bankruptcy law. They didn't just exploit it. They were its architects. They poured money into congressional campaigns to get representatives to vote for a law that would turn their clients into lifelong debtors. This wasn't an accident. It was a carefully planned and paid investment in your financial servitude. But even that wasn't enough. Federal loans, though guaranteed, still had limits on rates and amounts. So the industry created a new, even more toxic product: private student loans, without government guarantees, without any interest rate caps. They aggressively pushed these to students who had already exhausted federal limits, often at the most expensive and questionable for-profit colleges. It was financial heroin. The first dose, a federal loan, was almost free. But to finish your education, you needed a second, a third. And that's where they offered you a private loan with a floating interest rate, tied to the whims of the market. You signed the documents, not realizing that you had just agreed to a debt that could double or triple at the snap of some banker's fingers in New York. The structure was complete. Now you were locked inside with no chance of escape. And this is what life looks like inside that structure. Your diploma hangs on the wall, but your life plan now belongs to a loan officer. Every decision you make goes through their filter. Want to switch to a less profitable but more meaningful job? You can't. The loan payment won't allow it. Want to move to another city? First, calculate if you can afford the monthly installment. Want to start your own business? Forget it. Risk has become an unaffordable luxury. This is a new form of debt peonage. You are not chained to a feudal lord's land. You are tethered by a digital string in a database to a corporation you owe. Your diploma didn't free you. It became your brand. It tells a potential employer that you are educated. It tells your creditor that you will pay for the rest of your days because you have no choice. This system has canceled familiar life stages for an entire generation. Buying a first home, postponed for 10 to 15 years, or forever. Banks look at your debt-to-income ratio and simply deny mortgages. Starting a family. It becomes a mathematical problem with too many unknowns. How do you raise a child when your income is already allocated for decades ahead? Even marriage turns into a financial pact for merging debts. This effect extends far beyond your personal life. It cripples the entire economy. 45 million people with negative net worth. That's an army of consumers who have no money for consumption. They don't buy cars. They don't renovate. They don't go to restaurants. They service debt. All their economic energy goes into the black hole of capitalized interest. Imagine an engine where sand is poured in instead of fuel. That's what student loans do to the American economy. They stifle demand. They kill small business creation, the main source of new jobs. They create a generation afraid to take risks because falling means not just failure, but lifelong servitude with no right to debt discharge. But the deepest damage isn't economic. It's psychological. The system instills in you a constant sense of guilt. You are told it's your personal failure. You should have chosen a different major. You should have studied harder. You should have found a higher-paying job. This is a classic manipulator's trick, making the victim blame themselves. This shame paralyzes. It prevents people from talking about their problem. It isolates them. Each debtor thinks they are alone against a giant, faceless corporation. But that's a lie. You are not alone. You are legion. And your debt is not your fault. It's the result of a cold and precise calculation, a calculation in which your future was merely a line item in the profit column. This calculation isn't made by ghosts. It has names: Navient, Great Lakes, Nelnet. These are the new generation of debt collectors, known as servicers. After Sallie Mae's privatization, the system fragmented. The government began contracting with a dozen such firms to manage its giant portfolio of loans. On paper, their job is to help you answer questions, process payments. In reality, they are gatekeepers standing between you and any real solution to the problem. Their business model is built not on your success but on your confusion. Their contracts with the government are a masterpiece of bureaucratic alchemy. They receive a fixed fee for each debtor they service, not for each one who successfully repays their loan, but for each one who is simply listed in their system. For them, it makes no difference whether your debt decreases or grows due to forbearance. You are simply an asset bringing in monthly income. The longer you're in the system, the more stable their cash flow. They have no financial incentive to help you get out of debt, but they have every incentive to keep you there as long as possible. But the main twist in this story occurred in 2010. Amidst the financial crisis, the government decided to cut out the middleman. It stopped guaranteeing private bank loans and became the main lender itself through the direct loan program. The United States Department of Education, an organization created to promote learning, transformed into the country's largest consumer lending bank. Its balance sheet swelled to over $1 trillion. The money it lends to you, it borrows itself from the Treasury at a low interest rate. Then it lends it to you at a higher interest rate. The difference is profit. Profit that goes directly into the federal budget. A fundamental conflict of interest arose. The agency that was supposed to protect students became their main creditor. Its financial health now directly depends on your ability or inability to pay. Regulator and predator merged into one. This new architecture created a perfect storm. On one side, a government financially invested in maintaining and growing the debt portfolio. On the other, private servicers who get paid to administer that portfolio for their maximum benefit. And at the center of this structure is you, not as a student or a citizen, but as a source of guaranteed income for both sides. The system closed in on itself. To prevent this closed loop from looking like a prison, it was disguised as a rescue program. You were offered a way out: income-driven repayment plans. The idea sounded revolutionary. Your monthly payment would no longer be a fixed amount, carved in stone. It would become a percentage of your income. If you earned little, you paid little. If you lost your job, your payment became zero. And at the end of the journey, after 20 or 25 years of consistent payments, the remaining debt would simply disappear. It would be forgiven. This was a light at the end of the tunnel, a guarantee that the debt wouldn't be eternal. Millions of people enrolled in these programs, believing they had found salvation. But it was an illusion of light painted on a wall. The devil, as always, was in the math. For the vast majority of borrowers, payments under these plans were so low that they didn't even cover the monthly accruing interest. Imagine your debt is $100,000. Monthly interest accrued is $500. And your payment under the new plan is only $100. Where does the remaining $400 go? It's not forgiven. It's added to the principal balance. The next month, interest will accrue on $100,400. This is called negative amortization, a complex term for a simple fact: you pay, and your debt grows. You're running on an escalator that's moving down faster than you can climb up. This is where servicers come into play. Their job is to guide you through this maze, but their contracts incentivize the opposite. Every year you have to recertify your income by filling out complex forms. Any mistake, any delay, and you're kicked out of the program. Your payment skyrockets to the standard level, and all unpaid interest is immediately capitalized. Servicers systematically lost documents, gave incorrect advice, kept people on hold for hours until they gave up. This wasn't incompetence, it was strategy. And what about final forgiveness? That light at the end of the tunnel. By 2021, after decades of these programs existing, over 4 million people became eligible for debt forgiveness. Do you know how many actually received it? 32. Not 32,000. 32 people. The system was designed so that no one would reach the finish line. The Department of Education, which was supposed to oversee the servicers, simply turned a blind eye. It received reports. It knew about the widespread violations, but it did nothing. Because a growing debt portfolio is a growing asset on the government's balance sheet. Every servicer's mistake, every borrower who fell off track, was additional profit for the federal budget. You were sold a life raft that was tethered to a sinking ship.